Hi everyone, I'm Agnieszka from 5 Minute Language, and today I'm going to explain to you what Duolingo is. Just to say, this video is not sponsored by Duolingo. It is just a video that I decided to make because I've used Duolingo myself when learning languages, and I thought it would be useful to go through the main features of the app and to tell you something about the things I enjoy and the things I don't necessarily enjoy in the app. So, get ready. So Duolingo is basically a free language learning app which has quite a number of different languages in it. They add languages to the app regularly, so I'm not going to give you a specific number of languages that you can learn in the app here. But if you're interested in using Duolingo, make sure you get the app and then check whether the language that you want to learn is actually in it. And if it's not, then it might be worth just Googling it to see if they are making a course in the language you're interested in. One of those languages is Japanese, which I believe was released a few weeks ago. So for a long time there was no Japanese in Duolingo, but it's now available. So it's always worth checking back and seeing whether it's available. So Duolingo is really good for beginners. It's something that I would particularly recommend if you have never learned the language that you want to start learning. It's also good for kind of pre-intermediate or lower intermediate learners. There is an option to either start from scratch with every language, or you can kind of take a shortcut if you know a little bit of the language and you can test out of the different modules. So you can kind of start a little bit further along rather than starting from zero. This is something that I did for Spanish because I already knew a little bit of Spanish when I started with Duolingo. So each language course in Duolingo is organized into modules, which are in turn made up of lessons. So here's an example of a lesson which is part of a module. It's lesson 1 of 4 in this module, and it gives you an indication of what words will be covered in this lesson. And here's an example of an outline of modules. So this shows you how the modules are arranged in the Swedish course. So Duolingo basically gives you a kind of set order in which you have to follow these modules. And basically by completing each lesson in each module, you unlock the next lesson or the next module. So like I said, you can test out of certain modules if you feel confident that you know how to do the things that the module teaches. But if you're a complete beginner, then obviously you won't be testing out, so you need to be following the kind of order that Duolingo gives you so that you can keep unlocking the next steps and then go through the course in the order it's designed in. So I'm sure a lot of work has gone into kind of arranging those modules and those lessons into a kind of sequence that makes sense for language learning. I think what is nice in the kind of newer courses that have recently been added to Duolingo, so I'm talking specifically about the Japanese course, is that a lot of the modules are actually about things that are relevant. So for example, the Japanese course contains a module about the Tokyo Olympics, which is happening in, when is it happening? 2020, I believe. So it's a nice kind of way to motivate learners to learn a language because it is relevant to an event which is coming up, or like in the case of Tokyo Olympics, it's something many people around the world will be watching on TV, and it's just a nice way to connect the kind of cultural bits to the language bit of language learning. So like I said, when you complete a lesson in Duolingo, it shows you like a strength bar, which indicates how strong your knowledge of that module is, or that vocabulary or that kind of language package in that module. Which is a nice kind of thing. And as you go away for a few days and you come back, the strength bar becomes weaker. So then you have to kind of redo the lessons and to show the app that you can actually remember the words or the language structures that you learned a few days before, which is a really nice way of making sure that you don't just learn it once and then forget about it, but you actually come back to it. So Duolingo basically is programmed in a way that makes you focus on your weakest words. So if you constantly make the same mistake, Duolingo will recognize that and it will serve you those words, or it will serve you exercises with those common mistakes that you make in your next kind of revision session, which is a really nice way of ensuring that all of your vocabulary, everything that you learn, stays in your head. So here's an example of my weakest words in Esperanto. You can see the strength bar at the bottom. It's showing that the words are really weak, and I can press the button to strengthen them, so to practice them again and make them stronger. The other feature of Duolingo is that as you complete those lessons and those modules, you create streaks of days. So, for example, if I do a little bit of Duolingo today, and then a little bit tomorrow, and then a little bit the next day, then I've got a 3-day streak, which is a nice kind of way to motivate yourself if you don't want to break the streak. So there's a little bit of kind of gamification in there, and you can really be motivated by that because you get rewards for continuing your streaks. You basically get points that you can spend on various things within the app, which is a nice kind of motivating element if you like that kind of thing. So in terms of the actual lessons, what do they look like? So the lessons are very small and they focus on a very small element of language. So for example, you could have a lesson about colours and it just covers literally, the main 5 or 6 colours in the language you're learning. And the lessons usually focus on 3 different aspects. So vocabulary, writing, and listening. So vocabulary is usually taught by giving you a picture, and then it teaches you the word for that image. So you can kind of associate the image with the word, and the kind of exercises they give you to practice that word usually focus around matching. So either matching the word with the picture or matching the word with its translation. So if you're learning Spanish, for example, and you're an English speaker, then it would ask you to match English words with Spanish words, or maybe Spanish words with images, which is quite a nice way of learning. Although I'm going to mention at the end what my problem with that kind of learning is. So make sure you watch until the end. The other thing that the app makes you do a lot is translate. So it will give you a sentence and you will need to translate it into either your native language or into the language you're learning. So there's a lot of translation going on. And here's an example of a translation activity in Spanish. And there's a lot of listening as well. So there's a lot of kind of exercises where you hear a word and you're supposed to choose on the screen which word you've just heard. And here's an example of that in Japanese. You listen to the sound of the character and you need to choose what you've just heard. Or sometimes there's a sentence and there's a missing word and you listen to the recording and then you fill out the gap. So you have to kind of listen carefully and practice your listening comprehension, which is a nice way to practice a language. So this is it basically in terms of what the lessons look like. So let me just talk a little bit about the benefits and the kind of disadvantages that Duolingo has. So if you're trying to decide whether Duolingo is for you, perhaps this will be useful. So in terms of the good things, the benefits, I would say Duolingo is really good for keeping you motivated and for goal setting because, like I said, there are streaks and it's often quite motivating for me personally to be able to say, I want to do a 5-day streak and you are sent reminders by Duolingo by email. So you kind of don't forget that, you've got a streak there going on. And if you don't want to break it, then you should do a little bit of Duolingo today. The other thing is goal setting. So you can set yourself goals in Duolingo, which is also really useful. You can basically tell the app how much learning you're aiming for each day or each week, and the app will basically hold you to account. So you've got no excuse. It's also one of the benefits of the app is that it teaches you how to make sentences in the language you're learning from the start. So when you study French or Spanish or Japanese, it doesn't matter. You don't just learn little words, you actually learn sentences, you learn how to put those words into very simple sentences from the start, which is great because language learning is all about, making sentences and being able to say things from the start, rather than kind of waiting for the right moment. It also has a beautiful interface. It's really easy to use. I actually really like the design of the app and the kind of user interaction aspect of it. So that's another benefit if you like well-designed apps, basically. In terms of the kind of drawbacks of Duolingo, I would say the main drawback is that some of the sentences included in the app can seem a little bit unnatural. For example, one sentence that came up when I was learning Spanish was "the elephant drinks milk," which is not a kind of sentence you would necessarily be saying when you're in Spain, or, do elephants actually drink milk? I don't know. I don't think so. At least, maybe baby elephants do, but yeah, not a very useful sentence. But I can see the kind of reasoning behind it. You're learning basic words and you want to be making sentences from the start, from the very beginning. So even if they seem a bit unnatural and pointless, it's okay. It's okay. You're making sentences, right? The other thing I would say is Duolingo obviously doesn't include any kind of human interaction, which is a very important element of learning a language. You don't just learn a language by using Duolingo or using one resource, but you just have to remember that in addition to Duolingo, you need to think of a way to interact with other people who speak the language that you're learning. So, you can use italki, you can use any kind of Skype language exchange. Maybe there's a meetup in your town that you can go to, but make sure that you get that human interaction in, because Duolingo is all great. It's great at teaching you vocabulary, but you have to be using it as well. So the other thing I wanted to mention, which I mentioned a little bit at the start of this video, is that Duolingo relies heavily on translation, which is a kind of, using translation is a kind of traditional way of learning languages. It works, it has a lot of benefits, but I think what I would say is I personally like to learn a language by using my native language as little as possible. So, for example, if I'm learning new vocabulary, I would rather have a little definition rather than a translation next to a new word, just so I can associate a word with a concept rather than with the exact translation in my native language. But obviously, having said that, I know it's very difficult to do that when you're a beginner. So that's why I'm not saying it's necessarily a drawback of Duolingo, but I guess it's just a general comment on, learning languages. As you get better, try to incorporate less of your native language into your learning process and more of the language that you're actually learning. So yeah, my overall verdict is that Duolingo is a great way to start learning a new language. It's great for beginners. It's got a great kind of interface, really good for motivation, but make sure you get that human interaction in as well. And I wish you all the best, and make sure you subscribe to the channel and give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, if you found it useful. Let me know in the comments as well if you've used Duolingo and what your experience was of using it. So thanks for watching. Bye.